Hi, everybody, wherever you may be from coast to coast and sea to shining sea. Welcome back to Ham Radio Live, a show about radio for people who love radio. Today, Anthony Luscre, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango, taking your questions live on the show.
I was making my way through the wasteland. The road into town passes through. I was changing the radio stations with my mind on you.
Here's Anthony's pick. It's a good one.
All your friends call you Lily Paloma, but that's not the way that you are.
Little Al Stewart. The name of the song is called Song on the Radio. Perfect pick for Anthony's show. Take a listen to this. This is a great song by Al Stewart.
But you and me, baby, I saw you there. Straight away I knew there's really no hiding. I tell you right now what we're gonna do. We'll go collecting the days, putting the moments away.
Gonna welcome you from all over the world today to Ham Radio Live. Wherever you may be in this beautiful world, away we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Shack in Oregon. My name's Larry. My call sign in Ham Radio is Kilo 7 Hotel November. Happy Saturday to you. We have a really big guest today. And I want to talk to you by just kind of explaining his accomplishments and what he does. But before I do that, the main passion of this channel is to help you get into amateur radio. It always has been. Contact someone like the American Radio Relay League at www.arrl.org. Hit the Contact Us bar. They're going to send a ham radio club nearby to you an email, and then you contact the club. They'll help you get your license and help you get on the air. www.arrl.org. If you'd like to email the show, feel free to reach out to me at hamradiolive@gmail.com. Let's take a look at Anthony Luscre's QRZ page. Look at this. Master of Oceania, Master of North America, Master of Asia, Master of South America, Master of Europe, World Radio Friendship, United States Counties, Continents of the World, USA 50, that means he's got all 50 states, DX 100, and grid squares. Look at that. This guy is so accomplished. He really is. Here's Anthony working at W1AW in Newark, Connecticut. He got to work the gear there at W1AW. He really did. Here's a look at his shack. Take a look at that. He loves QRP. So for our QRP fans, today's going to be a fun show for you to ask questions. He's also written a lot of information on the webpage On All Bands. This is an amateur radio blog by DX Engineering. Let's take a look at some of the subjects, just give you an idea of how vast we can ask questions today. Memories of Field Day Adventures. Wrote a great article on that. Also, what is Logbook of the World? Why should you sign up for it? And how do you use it? Wonderful article there too. Next one, using the FT8 de-expedition mode, also known as Fox and Hound. Also, what was your first rig setup like? My 10 Tech Argonaut 515. And he wrote another one, top 10 tips for succeeding in FT8 mode. Another one, a few of my favorite QSOs. Next one, so you still have your license, but haven't operated in years. A guide to getting back into the hobby. I mean, look how vast this is. Next, technician class licenses. Expand your operating experiences. ARL Field Day and social distancing. What's your plan for COVID-19? Look at this. For shortwave listeners. Shortwave listeners in the digital age. One way to get youth on board. I love this article. This is a keeper. Read this one on all bands. It's very good. Also, DXing with a handheld. What you need to know. Also, the rise of digital modes, the changing face of ham radio. That article was the one that brought me to get a hold of Anthony to come on the show. He talks really well in that article about how FT8 has just taken over digital modes. Also, the rise of digital modes, the changing face of ham radio. FT8, what it is, and how could I get started? And finally, Field Day 101. How your club can achieve field day success. Also, 7 tips on buying and selling used ham radio gear. When I talk to you about a guy that really can go the full gamut, not only of shortwave, but ham radio, Anthony Luscre is the right guest for that. Let's travel all the way to Ohio and meet Kilo 8 Zulu Tango Anthony Luscre. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you, my friend.
Great to be with you.
Well,
Very nice. Thanks for inviting me, Larry.
It's a pleasure. My goodness, you already did a presentation today for another ham club, didn't you?
Oh, actually did one last night for the QSO Today Expo, and I'll
Wow.
be doing two again tomorrow. I've been working on Present All States over the pandemic. I've been trying to do presentations for local clubs that need presentations via Zoom.
Mhm.
And I will give you my list a little bit later of all the presentations that I have available,
Sounds
and
good.
invite anyone to have me come and speak to their local club.
There you go. And that's the cool part. If you're part of a club and you'd like to have Anthony speak, he's that guy. He'll do it. I do want to welcome some people around the world for coming. First of all, very first viewer to come in, the Smokin' Ape, and we always give the Roadrunner for our first viewer. Here we go. Good job, my friend. You get to feeling good, buddy, okay? Steve, welcome from the UK, Mike 7, India Whiskey Hotel. David from Kansas City, Alpha Echo 0, Papa Hotel. Cliff Bolts from Virginia, Whiskey Delta 4, Oscar Bravo, Papa. Anton from Holland is here, Papa Charlie 4, Alpha Delta. Good evening, Roger McKeon in the UK. We've got Kevin, Kilo 0, Kilo Lima Bravo, and he loves QRP. He's going to love this show. My brother Bob, courtesy of WIFI. Kevin from the UK is here. So we have more, lots of Andys and Kevins, to be honest. Kevin, Mike 0, Mike Charlie Lima is here. Gary Strong from Las Vegas, Nevada, Whiskey 9, Papa Yankee. Roger, Kilo Juliet 7, Lima X-Ray. Andy New from the UK. Hello, my friend, Mike 7, Charlie Union November. Daniel joins us from New Hampshire. Bass is here from Holland. Mike from Kirkland, Washington. Whew. William from Jacksonville. You got a full house here today. Ron Walensky, November 8 Whiskey Charlie Romeo is here as well. And we've got a very, very good group. Jason Heff as well. Thank you for being here. And Jeff Kulinek, Kilo Delta 9 Romeo Yankee Tango. It's great to have you. All right, my friend. What I want you to do, folks, is please put your questions in the comment section. What Anthony has accomplished is like the dream of any ham radio operator. He's worked DXCC, he's worked all counties, he's worked all states, and he does it with QRP, don't you, Anthony?
Yes, I do. Everything is 5 watts. I passed my 100,000 QSO mark last year in my 40th year in amateur radio.
Wow. Phenomenal. On 5 watts. Really?
Yes, and actually 2 watts when I started out. No one told me novices weren't supposed to start with a QRP radio, so I actually started out with a Ten-Tech Argonaut 515, 5 watts output, but 5 watts input, but actually only about 2 watts of output on that particular radio.
Oh my goodness! Wow. I want to say hello to Jason, Kilo November 4, Zulu Union November from South Carolina. Thank you for coming. And again, the Smokin' Ape, it's great to have you here. Thank you for coming, my friend. Please put your questions in the comments section for Anthony Luscre, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango. Talk about, if you would, you've got a great antenna farm on a small property. Could you show us a little bit of what that looks like?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. So,
and we're live here with Anthony Luscre, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango. He's going to show us his antenna farm. And this is really cool to be able to show you what you can do with maybe some limited space. He really makes the most out of it. Anthony's a brilliant man, really is.
is my sharing up or not?
Nope, not yet.
Okay, let me...
Hold on. I can see it in one part here, but it's not
I'm
showing
going
the
to
other
restart
side.
it again here.
Okay, no worries. And again, if you have questions for Anthony, please let us know. First one actually is here. By the way, Mercu C, welcome. That's Gabriel, Victor Echo 3, Bravo Delta Echo. First timer, welcome. It's nice to have you. Andy New from the UK, Mike 7, Charlie Union November asks, what antenna does Anthony prefer?
So are you seeing it now?
No, unfortunately not, my friend. We did earlier. We did the test. We had it fine, but yeah, don't worry about it. It's okay.
Let me try it again here.
Okay. And this is what makes Anthony so special. He will try again. And
I'm guessing we're not seeing it.
no, not yet. No.
Okay, I
So,
will try it
it's
one more
okay.
time here.
It's okay. And
So-
this is a good reason why, if you think about it, 5 watts, and you look at what this guy's accomplished look at this. He's basically got every award you can possibly want on QRZ. He's done it with QRP. That's fantastic to me.
Well, I'm not sure why the sharing is not working, but I'll describe what I have. I have a lot that's about 50 foot by about 150 foot, so it's not a very large lot, and I have a room that and a deck that takes up most of my backyard, but I do have enough room to squeeze in a 50-foot tower. On top of that tower, I have a log periodic antenna. It's no longer produced. It's the XP7705, but it's basically a 30-meter through 6-meter beam. And that works pretty well on the higher bands. I also have a 40-meter vertical antenna, which works well on 40 and 30, and 2 sloper antennas, basically wires coming off my tower that just come down to the ground, a 60-foot wire that has a small loading coil in it for 160, and an 80-meter sloper. And
Wow.
One of the things I can really suggest to people is if you can have multiple antennas, that really increases your chances to work different bands. My vertical worked fine on 40 and 30, but it was okay on 80, but not that great. And it was definitely not that great on 160. When I put the slopers up, that really increased my ability to work those 2 lower bands. And they're just wire antennas, so it was very inexpensive and easy to put up.
Yeah, wire antennas, I think people don't give enough credit to what you can do with the wire. Wire antennas are the cheapest antenna you can build, and they work fantastic. Just got to get them up high. That's the main thing. Yeah. I want to welcome a first-timer. This is David C502, his call sign Kilo India Ford, Delta Romeo Alpha. Thank you for being here today. Yes, sir, life is fun. Thanks, David, for being here. Anthony, how long have you been a licensee?
Last year was my 40th anniversary, July of 1981. I got my license.
Wow.
Kilo Alpha 8, November Radio Charlie was my novice license. I updated to technician later that fall and to extra class a few years after that.
Congratulations. Wow, that's phenomenal. Anthony, what is you've had, I'm sure, quite a few radios over the time frame that you've been a ham. Tell us about some of your favorites that you've had.
Well, I had to start with my first radio because I always was very interested, even before I got my license, in the Ten-Tech portable series called the PMs, PM1, PM2. They were very small, just a few band radios, QRP. And when I got my license, they were no longer available. So I went looking at the Argonaut, and the Argonaut 515 was the one that was available at the time. It was the black Argonaut. And I have to say it's my favorite. I still have my first radio. I bring it out at least once a year to play with it. I'm doing a presentation for the Colorado QRP group next month on that radio and using it. I also did a presentation for the Long Island CW group on that particular radio. So that's one of my favorites. Right now, I have a number of Elecraft radios I really like. I'm running a Elecraft K3S, the 10-watt version, and it's my main radio that I use. But I also have a Yaesu FT991 that I use on VHF and UHF, and
Great
occasionally
radio.
on HF when I want to run 100 watts for a special event station. So I do run some 100 watts when our club is doing special events or things of that nature. But my main operation for everyday QSOs is at 5 watts. Wow.
And that's fantastic, folks. So you folks in the UK that are on foundation licenses, right? You guys are limited to 10 watts. I mean, did you accomplish all these things on QRZ with that, like QRP levels?
Yes.
Okay. Folks with foundation licenses, look at these awards, okay? That means you can do the same thing. The antenna is really the key, isn't it, Anthony?
Yes, it's one of the keys. And my other big key is I suggest that you learn operating techniques that are advantageous for your lower power operation. And I do a lot of talks on that. I have one I'm giving next week for the Long Island CW group. It's called Get in the Rhythm, Learn the Rhyme, and Dance the Dance. And basically, Get in the Rhythm talks a whole lot about timing. Timing is so important. When you answer someone's CW call, it's basically like getting on a freeway and you're merging. Timing is everything. The speed at which you enter and where you enter is very important. And then the rhyme part is learning the exchanges for especially contests, so you can get on during contests. Even if you're not interested in the competition aspect of the contest, the whole idea of a chance to work stations that really need you for points. So knowing how to give the exchange gets you an entry into the contesting world, even if you're not doing it for competition. And then dancing the dance is learning how to use things like split on your radio and how to tune in a station for the if you're off frequency, and you can be answering the station forever and they won't hear you.
Right.
So just learning how to set up your radio and how to operate your radio. So it's get in the rhythm, learn the rhyme, and dance the dance is my talk. And all my talks that I do, I usually do slideshows for them, and they're available at tiny.cc/K8ZT-P.
Okay.
And
Very good.
that's
Could you repeat that one more time
yes,
so people on replay can, pick that up?
tiny.cc.
So TINY, right?
Yes. Tiny.cc/Kilo 8 Zulu Tango P Papa.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Have a question from the Smoking Ape. He says, question, did he have problems or troubles with noise on the vertical? If so, how did he counter it?
Well,
Good
I
question.
did have some issues, especially on 160 and on 80, and going to the sloper really made a big difference there.
Very
So
good.
it gets, again, a choice of antennas, having multiple antennas. I often get questions, what is the best antenna? And I actually have put together a list of what are the worst antennas in order. And I think that's a better way to go about it. The worst antenna is no antenna at all.
Yep.
The second worst antenna is an antenna that you have, but it's still in the box in the garage. It's not assembled.
Yeah.
The third worst antenna is an antenna that's assembled but not put into operation. The fourth worst antenna is an antenna with a bad feed system.
Mm-hmm.
And the fifth worst antenna is only one antenna.
There you go. Yeah.
So those are my 5 worst antennas. So if you work down that list, the obvious choices, you want multiple antennas installed well and operational.
Talk about, and Greg, I'll get to your question, and same with Kevin here in a moment. Talk to us about diversity reception, because when you have multiple antennas, you now have the gift of diversity reception.
Yes, but I have not really mastered that as well as some other people. It's more a case of using one antenna and switching between them. There are some people, though, that utilize 2 antennas at the same time for true diversity reception. But I'm going to call mine pseudo-diversity because I'm just simply switching between antennas and not listening at multiple times.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Greg from Bettendorf, Iowa, Kilo Fox 0, Charlie Union Zulu. Hi, Anthony. I pulled in a 5.9 signal into Iowa from Asiatic Russia, RC90 on 20 meters this morning. Would you consider an amp or just be persistent to get through the pileup? I'm running a 40-meter off-center fed dipole.
Well, I think being persistent is really the couple of good things. Also, learning techniques that I talked about earlier, knowing when to answer his call. And when I talk about that, what I mean is basically listen to the station, but also listen to the people that are being successful, the people that he's answering, and then mimic what they're doing. If they're calling him a little bit high in frequency, do the same. If they're calling him a little bit low, do the same. If he's taking tail enders, in other words, as soon as he finishes saying thank you to someone and you can drop your call in real quick, that might be something. But make sure he's listening to people like that. So you want to find out what the CQing station is responding to and then mimic that operation.
Very good. We're live with Anthony Luscre, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango. We're talking all modes here, not only FT8, but all modes of ham radio. If you have a question, ham, shortwave, DX related, feel free and put it in the comment section today for Anthony. Kevin from the UK, Mike 0, Mike Charlie Lima. Question. At my QTH, I have the South Downs to the north of me and the coast to the south of me. For QRP, am I better off up on the high ground or close to salt water?
Well, I don't have salt water close by here, so I can't take advantage of it, but I know people that swear by it. So if you can get down in the salt water, in other words, your radials are actually extending out into the salt water, I think you're going to have a great opportunity to work that way. But also having height is always a good thing too. Height is especially important when you're talking about VHF and UHF, but also having a good takeoff angle on HF can be beneficial too. Being in a valley can be somewhat problematic. You're going to notice that the higher up in frequency you are, the more height is going to be important, whereas the lower in frequency you go, the less height is going to be influential. So on 160 and 80, you're probably not going to notice a big difference with height, but on 6 meters and 2 meters, you're going to notice a very big difference.
Yep, good point. Yeah, because line of sight. That's important, especially on VHF, folks. No question. Live with Anthony Luscre, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango. Put your questions in the comment section. I'll make sure to add to the show. Andy New from the UK ordered his Sidewinder DX loaded coil vertical with tripod and ground spiked radials. Congrats on that, Andy. You're going to do very, very well. You really will. Looking through your question, Country Strong and Free. By the way, welcome back to the show. It's always good when you're here. He says, question, why does my security cameras go nuts when I transmit on 10 meters? Is it because the dipole is in the attic where the camera wires are also?
I think it is. I think you're probably getting an example of very close coupling between the two. And you may find it is only one specific frequency on 10 meters. It may not be all. So it may be dependent exactly if you're on the top of the band or the bottom of the band. But if you're really in close, it's probably just primary overload, and you're probably just getting too much signal into the wires.
That's very good. Thank you for that. Appreciate it very much. Steve, Mike 7, India Whiskey Hotel, question, what are your top tips for working low power in high QS Baker?
Yes. Well, first of all, the ability to choose the band you're operating on can sometimes eliminate some of the QS Baker. But so that's one of the first things. The other thing, too, is being able to operate different modes. The fading is much more problematic on single sideband than it is on CW or on digital modes. So I'm a firm believer in operating on all the bands that are available to me and all the modes that are available to me. So that gets me around some of those problems sometimes.
Very good. Very good. Live with Anthony Luscre, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango from the beautiful state of Ohio. Thank you for coming again, Anthony. It's an honor to have you here. Steve from the UK, Mike 7, India Whiskey Hotel, question, what are your top tips? Excuse me. Got that one already. Excuse me. Sorry about that. That was a repeat. Larry did a repeat. Okay. Want to welcome Mike Galloway, Kilo Delta 1 Hotel Foxtrot. Mike, welcome back. It's really nice to have you back. I appreciate it. What do you, in terms of the people who like to work QRP, what do you think are some of the challenges that you must, get used to or be prepared for if you're going to be running low power?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is it's going to require some patience. You're not going to be the first one through every power-up. Sometimes you will, but that's not going to be generally the case. So you have to remember that you're also going to have less success in QSL and CQing than a higher power station. So I do primarily most of my operating by search and pounce technique. I look for the stations I'm interested in working, and then I answer their CQs as opposed to calling CQ myself. Sometimes I do call CQ depending on what the situation is, or if I'm doing something like Parks on the Air or something along those lines where it's required to call CQ. But for the most part, I like to answer other people. So that gives me an opportunity to use my techniques that I've honed over the years to get through. So
tell us about that, Anthony.
You've got
your techniques. Tell us a little more about that.
Well, as I said earlier, timing is probably the most important thing. And no matter if you're operating QRP or high power, one of the things you need to learn as a ham is when someone's calling CQ, when do you choose to answer? Do you answer very quickly, immediately? Do you pause a second? Do you pause 2 seconds? So timing is very important. Choosing the exact spot that you want to call on frequency-wise. I would say by default, 0 beat the other station. In other words, be exactly on their transmitting frequency with your transmitting frequency. But sometimes stations are actually listening a little bit above or a little bit below. I'm not talking about split operation. I'm just talking about a few KCs. Also, if there's a big power-up, sometimes just by having your signal a little bit different than everyone else is calling, whether it's slightly different frequency, slightly different speed in CW, slightly different tone in phone, that makes you stand out from the crowd. So you want to stand out from the crowd. But again, also you want to mimic other people, and what's the people that are being successful do what they're doing.
Fantastic. When I think about what you accomplish, I mean, you've worked millions of pileups and you're running low power and you still make the call. That persistence really pays off for you. Wow.
And sometimes with a DXpedition, when they're working multiple bands, choosing which band you're going to start on might be helpful. I was trying to work an Antarctic island expedition a few years back that was very rare, and I really wanted to get them early on. I could have waited, but then I was afraid something might happen. So I chose a band that was less populated. I chose 30 meters. Probably not the best band for my antennas.
Good idea.
But I was able to make my contact on the first night on 30 meter CW.
Wow.
Whereas if I would have spent the time on 20 meter CW, I would have been going up against a lot more people.
Man, that's fantastic. I would love to work Antarctica too. That's one of my goals as well. I want to get to a question Andy New had asked earlier. This is about your go-to radio. Here it is. Andy New in the UK. What's Anthony's rig of choice?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the Elecraft K3S is my favorite radio here in the shack, and my portable radio favorite is the Elecraft KX2 little portable radio. I really like the Elecraft radios. I think they have very good reception, very good selectivity.
Yep.
And I like radios that do CW with QSK, in other words, full break-in, so I can hear in between whether someone's on the other side trying to get in at the same time I am.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care for radios that have loud relays in them when I'm sending CW. I like my Yaesu FT817 that I had years ago, but on CW, the sound of the relays in the radio was rather disturbing to me. So but the most important thing is a radio that you feel comfortable with using and that you can do all the things, like know how to operate split, know how to quickly go to a new frequency, know how to quickly use the filters to narrow down or to move up or down by shifting the filters. So being able to use your radio, reading that manual and getting on the air and practicing with it are really the most important things. Modern radios are great. I don't think you're going to have a problem with the radio selection. I think what you really need to do is spend time being able to use all the features of the radio.
Very good. Wow, thanks, Anthony. That was a good answer. Live with Anthony Luscre from Ohio, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango. He's done so much with QRP. It's phenomenal. Country Strong and Free, thank you, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango. And everyone, your advice is very appreciated. And Spoken Ape jumps in with plasma. Not again. No. Kevin, Reverse Beacon Network is a really useful tool when out in the field to see where you are being heard. Do you ever use those?
Tool. Yes, and I just did a presentation. I actually have a presentation on my slideshow. It's basically assessing whether your station is getting out. And I use a number of things to be able to tell whether I'm getting out. Because when you're running low power, and sometimes you think, well, my station is not getting out, but maybe someone's just not answering you. With the Reverse Beacon Network on CW or RTTY, if I simply send CQ a couple times with my call sign, stations around the world will pick me up automatically and then relay that information back to the Reverse Beacon Network website. So I can tell real quickly, not only am I being heard at different places in the world, but also what my signal strength in dBs is. So it's a very accurate response as opposed to just getting signal reports from other stations. So again, Reverse Beacon Network, you can trigger it by sending CQ with your call sign or test with your call sign. Either way will be fine. And read up on that on my slideshow presentation on assessing your station's performance. Mm-hmm. I talk about that as one of the tools.
Excellent. Thank you, Anthony. A question from David C502. What kind of coax or window line do you use? The question revolves around power losses in transmission lines and maximizing power used. Good question, Dave.
Yes, and I use open feed line for some of my antennas, portable antenna operations. Using an open feed line like window line or 600 ohm or 300 ohm or 400 ohm line decreases the losses when your SWR match is not that great. So a center-fed horizontal antenna with twin lead can be a lot more effective as a multi-band antenna than one fed with coax.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
When you are using coax, though, it's important to pay attention to the loss factors. The loss factors on coax change on the band you're on. The higher up in frequency you go, some coaxes are not acceptable. The loss may be more than half your signal.
Yes.
So RG59 on 2 meters,
not good.
If it's more than a few feet long, you're wasting a lot of your signal in the line. So
yes.
Again, quality coax. Also, you want to make sure the coax is still in good condition. And there's a couple tricks you can do as far as that. Before you ever install any coax, always check it with antenna analyzer with a dummy load on the end to make sure everything is working. And then record what your readings are once you get it installed. And that way you can check it over time. And if your SWR is creeping up, it might be something wrong with your antenna. It might be something wrong with the connection, or it could be the coax itself. So coax does wear out. I'm exceeding 20 years on some of mine right now, and it definitely needs replaced. I got some coax replacement plans for this summer.
Well, very good. Very good. Martin from Holland, Papa Echo 9, Tango India Golf. Do you like PSK Reporter for FT8?
Yes, I have PSK Reporter up all the time on my screen, and it's great because it shows who is decoding me, even if they're not sitting there in their station. If you leave first of all, when you go into WSJTX, there's a little button in the setup that basically sends a the information for all the stations you're decoding via an internet link to the PSK Reporter website. That then aggregates all the incoming reports, and those reports will show everyone in the world that's hearing me and what signal strength they're hearing me at, even if they're not there operating, if they just have the radio on. One night in March on 160 a few years ago, I watched as PSK Reporter was saying DP0 GVN in Antarctica was getting me at -6 dB, and it was for over 20 minutes.
Wow.
Unfortunately, no one was obviously sitting in the chair because they never responded to me. But PSK Reporter can be a great way if you use FT8. But if you don't use FT8, if you know someone in your area who's an active FT8 user, you can simply type their call sign into PSK Reporter and see who's hearing them, and you'll have the same sort of results on other bands and other modes. So you don't have to be an FT8 user to use PSK Reporter as a propagation tool.
Very good. Thank you, Anthony. It's great advice. Anthony, you wrote an article on all bands regarding buying and selling gear. Can you talk more about that? We have a lot of new hams here,
Yes.
and I'd like to make sure that this gets covered. It's a very important topic.
Yes, and I have a whole slide presentation on buying amateur radio equipment also, where I go into talking about, first of all, assessing what you want, what you need, what your needs are, and then looking for items. I also talk about the different methods of buying. You know, you can buy new equipment through a dealer. You can buy used equipment through other hams. We have a number of ham fests. Now, that's been sort of suspended as we've went through COVID, as many things have been, but
Yep.
There's different ways to buy equipment. I think it's really important. One of the things that we often forget to do when we get licensed as new hams is to find someone to act as a mentor with us. Because if you're going out and trying to buy a radio and you really don't have a lot of idea of what you need or what type of conditions are important or which ways to buy a radio, it can be very, very difficult for a newcomer. So I really strongly suggest you find someone who can help mentor you in that area and work with you. Also, if you can visit other people's shacks and get an idea of what they're using, because when you're looking at the advertisements, all the radios look great.
Yeah.
And they also make you think that you need to spend a lot of money sometimes, whereas you don't always need to spend a lot of money. If you go out and visit some other people's shacks and see some older equipment or less expensive equipment, you can see that they're being very successful without spending a lot of money. And I have a matrix. It's a spreadsheet. It shows current and recently discontinued HF radios under $2,000, and it has a list of features on it, so you can compare the different features for the different models to get an idea of what you really want. It's often the whole idea of buying new radios is often you see what everyone else is then buy the same thing. So it's sort of a follow the leader type of thing. And that's not necessarily the best way to go, because that radio might be really good for one person, but not for another person. So you really need to look at what you're interested in.
Yeah.
So if you're starting out as a new ham, that balance might be between buying an HF only radio or a radio that does HF, VHF, and UHF.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which radio is the one that's really going to serve your needs best?
Great comment.
Do you need that fancy band scope on the front? Does that really bring anything to the operation?
Amen. There you go. Yeah, absolutely. Anthony, I love that comment. And I don't mean to cut you off, but that is so important in today's ham radio world. You go into like a HRO and you see these beautiful screens and the waterfalls. Man, it's impressive. But holy cow, you can go back maybe a 15-year-old radio that everything is fine. They've replaced the caps. Things are good. And it works brilliantly. And man, if you just put your money in that antenna first, you're going to be so far ahead of the curve. Talk a little about that. Will you? About
Yes.
the importance of how to build your shack. This would be very important for people to understand.
Yes, and I've often put together, I tell people to go through and make a list of the items they need to purchase to do what they want to do. And one of the items on that list is going to be the radio. So that's going to be one of the expenses. But you also need to remember that you're going to need a power supply.
Yep.
You're going to need quality coax.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to need antennas or antennas.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those things need to be added up. So if you have a $2,000 budget and you buy a $2,000 radio, all of a sudden you have no money to buy a power supply, an antenna, or any cable. So
Yeah.
the radio is going to sit in the box.
Yep.
But if you buy a $1,000 radio, that gives you another $1,000 to use for those other items in the budget.
Mm-hmm.
So I even put together a small spreadsheet that I share with one of my presentations on, calculating out the cost of a station. And I've helped people put together a station for under $2,000 that covers HF, VHF, has more than one antenna so that they're able to operate the different bands, and has quality feed line. And we're talking $2,000.
Wow.
So it can be done. And if they're willing to go with even cheaper equipment, it can be done for even less than that. So it's a balance too, but I would suggest to a new ham, don't jump into the used market too quickly unless you have someone to help you out.
Mm-hmm.
If you have someone that can give you, and I'm not talking about repairing, I'm talking about just getting things set up and operating. Repairing is a whole other story beyond that. But there are a lot of radios available that are fairly new or new, that without a lot of expense. You can buy an HF only radio, brand new, for under $700.
Yes, you
if
can.
You're willing to go with something like the Yaesu FT 891.
Mm-hmm.
It only has HF, doesn't have a big screen. It's actually designed as a portable, but a very solid 100-watt radio that would provide great operations. It's lacking an antenna tuner, so you either need to use resident antennas or have an external antenna tuner. It doesn't have a spot to hook up a digital sound card immediately, but that's also not that expensive of an accessory.
Now, also the ICOM 7100, you can get HF, VHF, and UHF all in the same box.
And D-Star too.
And D-Star too, exactly. Yep.
It has a monochrome screen though. But
exactly.
You know what? It's the other person on the other end will never see your fancy display.
That's exactly right, Anthony. Well said. That's right. Okay. Steve from the UK, Mike 7, India Whiskey Hotel. Question, what's your favorite digital mode and why? Great question, Steve.
Well, I'm going to tell you that it's FT4, not FT8, because it's twice as fast. So when FT8 transmits about 12.5 seconds and then has about a second and a half for decode. So it's basically a 15-second cycle. And that's fine and good. And it's very real. It has very good signal to noise ratio. But if you give up just a little bit of that signal to noise ratio on FT4, it's twice as fast. So on 6 meters, 10 meters, and 12 meters, when E-skip is in effect, quite often E-skip will fade in and out. So I might start out with a station that's very loud and he's hearing me very loud, but by the time we would be able to complete a FT8 contact, about 1 minute, the band is faded. On FT4 at half the time, I often have a good chance to work it. So if you're already using FT8 and you haven't tried FT4, give FT4 a try, especially on the higher bands.
Wow, it's very good advice. Thank you for that, Anthony. I want to welcome a dear friend. This is Charlie, Red Summit RF, November 7, Juliet Victor from Arizona. He says, busy day today, home improvements and QSO today Expo, but all things stop for Ham Radio Live. Charlie, you're too kind. And what Charlie does, which is interesting, and you'll probably like this, Anthony, Charlie has a YouTube channel and so does the Smokin' Ape. They both do excellent work on YouTube, where Charlie will go out and he'll hike up to summits. He'll go like a mile up in Arizona heat or cold and climb up to the top of a mountain and work a lot of QRP and make incredible calls because he's way up high. Talk about the importance, if you would, of height to an HF antenna. Well,
again, there's a whole number of factors involved with an HF antenna. The height is very important. The ground, the conductivity of the ground under your antenna is very important, especially for verticals, so a large number of radials. We talked about being on that seashore and being by the salt water is always great.
Yep.
But one of the things that a lot of people don't understand about horizontal antennas is depending on the frequency, as you go down in frequency, in other words, you go down to 40 and 80 meters, you need to have that antenna up higher to be effective.
Yep.
To be a quarter wavelength high on 20 meters is only about 30 feet. So that's very easy to do.
Yep.
But when you start going up down to 160, it starts to become hundreds of feet. So it becomes sometimes impractical to put up a two support horizontal antenna and get a good horizontal antenna. So that's sometimes where you need to switch to verticals or to slopers or to inverted Vs. So height of the antenna itself. A lot of people will read about NVIS, near vertical incident antennas, and that's an antenna that sends your signal basically directly up. And by lowering any horizontal antenna down below this optimum height, you'll develop that.
Yep. Yep.
But most people don't really need to do that because a lot of people's horizontal antennas are already at a minimal height or below that height. It doesn't mean they won't work.
Right.
But if you can get that horizontal antenna up higher, you'll probably have better success.
Very good. Live with Anthony Lucere, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango from Ohio, talking about all things ham radio today. Martin from Holland, and this is a great comment. Pop Echo 9 Tango India Golf. I cannot hear the difference between ICOM, Yaesu, or an Alinco. Yeah, these are all going to pick up the signals. It's just how they work. That's all it really is. And they all work very differently. Skeeter, welcome, buddy. Kilo 7 Tango Romeo Delta. I have an FTDX 10. I rarely rely on the waterfall. That's a good comment. Use your ears. That's important. Anthony, you've been a ham a long time. Talk about the importance of keeping your headphone volume at a manageable level so you don't go and get hearing loss.
Yes, it's the whole idea of getting of abusing your ears is something that I really worry about with my teenage grandchildren. They have earbuds, they wear them all the time, and they don't control the volume. So that's really a sign of something that's going to be a future problem. I loved when I'm operating. I always wear headphones, and I always make sure I have my automatic gain control on. Do not turn off your automatic gain control on your HF radio. That's a safety feature to keep you from getting those really loud signals. But one of the things that really helped me over the years in amateur radio is I started out working amateur radio satellites, and not the low orbit satellites, but the high orbit satellites like Oscar 10.
Really?
Where there was quite a bit of problem actually hearing the station. So it really helped me to develop my acute listening for signals on the air. So I found that when I moved from satellites to HF work, boy, everything was really easy to hear.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I think it's very important that you train your ear to be able to hear signals through background noise. And another thing too that a lot of people mistakenly do on the lower HF bands, 160, 80, and 40, back your RF gain down a little bit. Because what you're really going for in any amateur radio contact is you want a high ratio of signal to background noise. And on some bands, there's a lot of background noise there already. So by dropping your RF gain slightly, you decrease the sensitivity of your radio, but you're also knocking out a lot of the background noises competing with the signal.
Good
so
comment.
Try that out.
Yeah.
Try backing off your RF gain, especially on 160, 80, and 40. And if you have an attenuator switch on your receiver, try that out on the lower bands. That'll attenuate the incoming signals, and it also knocks down the noise considerably.
Great comment, Anthony. I love that
Your preamp
comment.
should only be used on the upper bands, 6 meters, 10 meters, 12 meters, maybe down to 20. But once you get below 20, you don't want to run the preamp. In fact, you may want to run the attenuator.
Good comment. Thank you, Anthony. That's well done. Mike Oswald from Kirkland, Washington. And this is, you'll be able to answer this. You'll have some comment on this. He says, it is often said that digital, an example FT8, will be the death of ham radio. Yet the hams I see on FT8 are by the largest majority extras, not generals. Am I missing something?
Well, I shared with Larry a picture that I saw on a for a presentation, and it was a car from the early 1950s, and on the back it said something like "stamp out single sideband."
Oh, yeah.
So during the late 40s, early 50s, a lot of people said that single sideband was going to be the death of amateur radio.
Yep.
They were
AM
AMers
people.
through and through.
Yep.
But guess what? The same thing happened when Spark was replaced by CW. And the same thing happened when people start operating AM instead of operating CW. Every time a new development comes by, the old gloom and doomers say this is going to be the death of amateur radio. And what happens is some of those people drop out because they get frustrated, but a lot of new people get into the hobby because of these new innovations. I know people that live in antenna restricted areas, small apartments, condos, etc. And for them to operate, they need to run low power, and they have a poor antenna besides. So FT8 and FT4 have been a way for them to make contacts that they'd never be able to make using single sideband. Yeah. So these modes fill a need, and I don't think they'll be the death of anything. I think they're actually indicating a big increase. And let's just talk about youth for a second.
Yes.
I do a lot of demonstrations for youth.
Yep.
And one of the things the last thing I demonstrate to youth is a phone contact on HF. they're not interested because they have that device in their pocket that they can make a phone contact with. It's called a telephone. But when I show them things like point and click on a station to work them on FT8, they like that idea. Or if I show them contesting where there's competition involved, if I show them other modes like that, and even a lot of them like CW, the whole idea of a secret code that other people don't know that they can learn and use.
Yeah.
So I think first of all, I hear a lot of people say, well, I'm going over to the evil side and operate FT8, or I'm going to operate.
There you go.
There is no evil side. Operate all the modes you're allowed to operate and find new modes to get involved with. So, no, it's not the death by any means. It's just growth as growth has always occurred over the last 100+ years.
That's fantastic. And this is what Anthony's basically saying. If you've got the ability to use all the modes, try them out. You may like them, you may not like them, but at least you tried them, and that's important. Anthony, thank you for that comment. Over the years, Anthony, you've seen a big change in amateur radio. From 1981 to 2022 is remarkable. I mean, 81 was the beginning of digital readout for frequencies, right? And then
Yes.
all of a sudden, in the 90s, they start getting this little pen adapter screen, and you start seeing the peaks on the screen. And then we turned into digital radio. And what do you think has been the biggest impact in radio since you've been a ham?
Well, when I wrote my article on getting back into amateur radio after a long time, a couple things that came to mind really quickly in that process. When I started out in 81, my wife also was licensed as K8ZT. We both had 2-meter radios in our car, and that was the way we kept in touch via the local 2-meter repeater. So 2-meter repeaters and repeaters in general were very important to hams. A lot of that has fallen off because now we keep in track with our friends and relatives, even though they're hams, via texting and phone calls. So that aspect has really changed.
Yep.
Also, when I got my license back then, my HF privileges as a novice and as a technician consisted only of CW.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I got started in slow speed CW. But then in 1987, 35 years ago, this month actually, was the novice enhancement. Novices got 10-meter phone privileges, so I jumped into 10-meter phone at that time, and that became very popular.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's been just constant changes. The other big thing, too, that we forget about was the whole packet radio phenomenon.
Yes.
Packet radio was the way that I connected and exchanged basically the equivalent of emails with all my friends who were hams around the world. So I was doing email, quote unquote, via packet radio long before I ever had anything on the internet or had started using regular what we would call email today.
Yeah.
So we forget about these developments that have taken place because we've moved on to something else. But there's been a lot of changes over the years, and I think we'll continue to see a lot of changes. I think we're going to start seeing some digital modes that basically mimic CW and phone. We're going to start hearing a lot more signals that you would be able to interpret via ear because they sound the same after they come out of your radio.
Yep.
But in fact, they're not being transmitted in an analog form from point A to point B, where the transmission takes place. You would speak into your radio, it turns turns the information into a digital encoded information, transmits that digital encoded information, which is decoded by the radio on the other side, and comes out as voice.
Yeah.
So digital voice on HF, I think, is going to become popular. Enhanced CW through digital transmission is another possibility.
Interesting.
So I think you're going to see some other modes coming up in the next few years. And we've seen with FT8, the whole ability to do sound card-based modes has just meant that we've basically turned our ability to use our computer to encode information, send it to the radio, and then decode it on the other end has meant that we can just keep adding more and more modes.
Fantastic. And, I agree with you. You hear a lot about how FT8, FT4, it's just going to completely overtake ham radio. It's just a different mode. I don't think you'll ever get rid of voice. People like to speak to each other. That's just part of ham radio. I like this comment that comes from Jacksonville. This is from William, November 5, Echo Victor Victor. He said, at Ham Radio Live, people are saying the same thing about Parks on the Air. Parks on the Air is going to kill ham radio. Seems to me it's bringing in even more alive here. I agree with you. And I think most of the people who really are working the FT8 and FT4, a lot of young people, because they're the digital generation, text messaging. They love that stuff. So I could see that being true. And I love this comment, William. Very good comment. Do you find when you do a lot of your talks that most of the people that are running like FT8, FT4 are younger.
I do find that, but amateur radio is interesting. I think there's a group of people at all age levels that are very accepting of new technology. Amateur radio is one of the true lifelong learning things that occur. We talk a lot. I work in education for years, and they all talked a lot about lifelong learning. People learning after they graduate from high school and from college, etc. And in some groups, you don't see that a lot, but I see 80-year-old amateur radio operators learning how to use a computer so they can do a digital mode.
Very cool.
So cool. It's not just limited to youth, but I think even traditionally in amateur radio, youngsters tend to prefer non-voice modes because it doesn't let other people know that they're a youngster.
Yeah.
On
CW, good point.
You're anonymous. On digital modes, you're anonymous, because some people unfortunately have biases against working certain people on the air, and on phone they can pick those people out. They can't do the same thing on CW or digital modes.
Good point. That's a great point. No one's ever made that point in the show. Very, very well. William in Jacksonville, November 5, Echo Victor Victor. Question: where did you get the Maidenhead map? This right behind you there, Anthony. Where'd you get that?
That is from the German Amateur Radio Society. I bought that at Dayton. Yes, a number of years ago, but it is available online. It's a great European map because it has the details of all the European countries and the grid squares, and it also has the prefixes. You can't see that, but in the countries that have prefixes assigned by different areas, like in Italy, it shows where the 1s, the 2s, the 3s, the 4s are on that.
What about the one that's behind you there, the U.S. one? Where did you get that one?
That's an ARRL one. That is available from the ARRL. And also, I have when you go to my website, I have a whole section on maps and charts. And I recently put together a newsletter for our local club. It's called Maps and Charts for Amateur Radio. It has multiple links to printable charts for frequency, bands, modes, different types of geographic things like CQ zones, IARU zones. It also has a thing to generate a polar map based on your central location, so you know what all the bearings are from your location. And it has the ability to also generate things like let you know what grid square you're in or different factors. So again, maps and charts. I have a whole presentation on that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Anthony. We're live with Anthony Luscre, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango. Thank you for being part of the show today, my friend. Keith has a great question. Kilo Mike 5 Tango X-Ray says, sorry if this has been asked already, but does Anthony play around with slow scan television? Great question.
I am guilty of never transmitting a signal on slow scan television, but I do copy it. The software is very easy to get. It's the same people that make the MMMT RTY software. Mm-hmm. And again, if you're not familiar with slow scan television, tune your HF radio to 14.230 and you'll hear some distinctive sounds. And with the computer and the simple software, you can convert those sounds into pictures on your screen.
Unbelievable. Ham radio has changed so much since you started out. I mean, you think about all the modes that have come in, all the different things that we can do now, and the radios too, the big improvements in the radios. It's just phenomenal. By the way, I want to talk about that T-shirt. That is a beautiful Dug-On T-shirt when they're from 2009 Field Day. That's a great shirt.
It's my favorite shirt. Unfortunately, it's starting to wear out a little bit, so I wish the ARRL would have a reissue vintage Field Day T-shirts.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Steve in the UK, Mike 7, India Whiskey Hotel, would love a map with call sign prefixes for areas. Have you ever seen one of those?
Yes, there's a number of them out there. And then there's also a number of software tools. DX Labs is one that you can use. And also something called, there's a piece of software, it's a shareware software, it's about $29 called DX Atlas. So search for DX Atlas. It's a software that shows the prefixes for the different zones, and it lets you, for the different countries. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's something very important. There's a number of resources for that sort of thing. But a lot of times it's if you're doing a wall chart, like I do have a map that has the prefixes for all the countries on it. You can't see that because it's a little bit above the screenshot of my shack. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of hard to see in detail. So there's like the European map that zooms things in, or having on screen tools. And by the way, if you do have a computer in your shack, which I'm guessing most of you do, think about adding a simple, cheap second monitor to it and use that monitor then to display things such as maps or charts while you're operating.
Yes. That's a great comment. That is a fantastic comment. William in Jacksonville, November 5, Echo Victor Victor. Could you please again give your website address, Anthony?
Yes, it's Kilo 8 ZuluTango.com.
There you go. Kilo8ZuluTango.com. Perfect.
And then when you go there, there'll be a little button right in the front that says presentations. You can click on that, or you can go to the presentations directly at tiny.cc/Kilo8ZuluTango-P-Papa.
There you go. All right. Final questions for Anthony Luscre, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango. If you've got a quick question, post it in the comment section. We will ask Anthony. Anthony, do you have a favorite QSO you've made? Could you talk about it a little bit?
Well, I did an article for the DX on all bands on some of my favorite QSOs, and one of them was Mongolia. I was always wanted to work Mongolia. As a kid, that just had this, the far away exotic aspect to it. And I not only worked Mongolia, but I was able to get a QSL card, and it's one of the most beautiful QSL cards I have. It has sort of gold on it, and it's very interesting. So I really strongly take a look at the DX Engineering on All Bands blog and take a look at my article on my favorite QSOs. Then one of my other favorite QSOs involved my children. They were young at the time, and I heard a station in Tasmania off the coast of Australia. And of course, I invited the kids downstairs to hear this station. It was a phone contact, so they were able to listen. And they, of course, thought it was the Tasmanian Devil of the Looney Tune cartoon series. So and the gentleman's name was Moss. And Moss was very good. He said hi to him and everything. But I remember that contact because the whole idea of working this rare location of Tasmania and having the kids think that it was a Tasmanian devil I was talking to.
Oh, that's great. That's so funny. My goodness. Anthony, you do a lot of presentations. How many do you do a year?
Well, I've done over 150 since the beginning of COVID. And that doesn't include my sessions that I do for the Long Island CW group. But I probably average 1 to 3 per week.
Wow. And before COVID, has it always been this way, or just pretty much?
I've done presentations in person, and in my background before I retired, I was in educational technology, so I would do presentations at educational technology conferences for teachers. So I've loved doing presentations all my life, so I've been doing presentations. But COVID has been very, very good to me because it's really expanded my audience. Before, when I would do a talk to a local radio club, it had to be pretty much in Ohio or Western Pennsylvania, so I could travel there in less than a couple hours. Now I'm doing sessions in England. Derby over in England has had me there twice, and so I think that's one thing. The other thing I'm involved with is called the Rat Pack. It's radio amateur. I'm going to forget what the acronym means now, but take a look. Do search for Rat Pack Radio, and we do a session every Wednesday and Thursday night. I'm on the planning committee. Wednesday nights are general topics, and Thursday nights are always on emergency communication. We have over 170 presentations we've done in the last 2 years, and they're all recorded and available.
Very good. Live with Anthony Luscre, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango. Final call for questions. Please put them in the comments section. And thank you to Kevin. Nice comment. Mike Zero, Mike Charlie Lima. Great show, Larry. And thank you, Anthony. Proves the point that you can have more fun with 5 watts than a kilowatt. That is well said, Kev. Yep. Just, if you could, before we go, could you briefly talk about what it takes to be a top-level QRP operator?
Persistence.
There you go.
Persistence, and timing. Those are the 2 most important aspects. And also getting on the air whenever you have the possibility. The more you're on the air, the more contacts you're going to make, which means the more states you're going to work, which means the more countries you're going to work. Work contest, even if you're not interested in competition, because it's a great chance to work a lot of stations in a short period of time. So getting on the air, my presentations on the Long Island CW group, my group is called The Joy of Operating, and that's really my favorite part of amateur radio is operating. So the joy of operating, get on the air often, get on all bands, get on all modes, and operate all different types of activities.
Very good. Thank you so much. Lon, welcome Abe Deuce, first timer. Welcome to the show. And Anthony, final words here. We have a very good group here. We've got people that, for the most part, are full licensees in the UK to the foundation licenses. So, all throughout the 3 classes. And we also have people here who are not licensed, as well as people who are technicians through extras. What would you give as practical advice to a new ham to build their first shack?
First thing, find a mentor. And how do you find a mentor? There's a number of different ways. Look for local radio clubs in your area. That's always a great way. But don't give up on the idea, if there's no one in your area, of finding a mentor online. Also, there's not just one mentor. You can have multiple mentors. I have a mentor who helps me out when I have technical issues. I have another person that's great with antennas. I have another person who's a great contester. So find people who are knowledgeable, ask a lot of questions. And my wife says I'm now the person answering the questions, but I was always the person asking the questions when I was in UHAM. So I think that's one of the most important things to start out with. Read, watch videos, learn something new, and try something out new every year. I have a presentation called...
I like that. Yes. Try something new every year. That's a nice comment.
I have a presentation called Technician Beyond the Local Repeater, with a number of different activities you can try out with your technician class license, both on HF, VHF, UHF. There's so many things you can try out besides just listening to the local repeater, which may have cobwebs on it because there's not a lot of people talking on it. So try some things out. Try some VHF, UHF contesting if you're a technician. Set aside the beginning of June, the ARRL VHF, UHF contest. Get on 2 meters, get on 6 meters. Try that out. Try out FT8 on those. Try out phone on that. There's so many things you can do. If you're not doing something new every year, you'll get tired of it. And what I do every January is I keep a spreadsheet. I start from 0 and see how many days it takes me to work all states. I did it in 3 days this year.
No
Sometimes
kidding,
it's taking me longer.
Seriously.
And then I also restart my DXCC. So I'm now at 98 DXCC for 2022.
Already.
Yes. And
already.
The great thing is there's a contest you can get involved with that aspect of things. CQ has something called the CQ DX Marathon. Every year you send in your count of countries and zones for the year as a competition. So it doesn't matter what you do long term. This is for the short term, 1 year long. So
wow.
You might say, well, I'm never going to get to the top of the DX list because there's people that have been doing it for 60 years and they've worked all these stations that I'll never get a chance to work. But every year you can compete in the DX Marathon and be on the same footing as every other DXer that year.
A good comment. Andy New, Mike 7, Charlie November. Wonderful show tonight as usual. Anthony brought his extensive knowledge to us tonight. Thank you, Larry and Anthony. Thank you. We appreciate that. Thank you. That's very, very kind. Mike Oswald, there was a comment about don't hear China very much on the air. Well, Mike Oswald said China is often on FT8, not so much on SSB. So there you go. Steve with a great comment. I think it's a comment in the show. Mike 7, India Whiskey Hotel. My dad is a ham and got me into the hobby. Great having someone you can talk things over with and get advice. That's true. Absolutely true. And that kind of piggybacks on what you said, Anthony, about finding mentors, not just one maybe, but multiple people who can help you.
And if you're thinking about getting your license and you don't have your license yet, you can search for classes that are local, but we also do our classes online. So we do technician and novice and technician and general classes every year. We usually do 2 per year with my local club, and we have people from all over the U.S. that do it. We do it for free. We do 6 classes on Sunday afternoons, and we do that. But you can go to the ARRL website and search for classes and find not only local classes, but online classes.
Well, just great stuff with Anthony Luscre today. Kilo 8 Zulu Tango. Anthony, any final words here to the folks that are watching?
Get on the air, operate, have fun.
Yeah, and that's a great comment because you know what? He's, again, 10 watts. He uses 5, is it 5? Is that right? 5 watts? Wow.
Yes. Less than your local refrigerator's using to light the bulb.
There you go. There you go. Exactly. So you folks in the UK on the foundation license where you're limited to 10 watts, here's a guy that has worked the world on 10 watts. He's worked all states, worked all counties, DXCC, now going for his second DXCC. And Anthony, what do you think the key is to that? in terms of you running low power? What do you think is your key to your success?
Learning about propagation,
Very good.
learning how to operate, learning good techniques for operating. The radio equipment and the antennas help out, but they're not the only thing.
Yep, I agree, 100%. Anthony, thank you for coming on a Saturday. I know you're busy. You got another presentation to do, and I thank you sincerely, and I mean profoundly, for taking the time to speak with us today about ham radio. It's been great.
Oh, it's been great for me also. I always love talking.
You did good. You did good, mate. You did good. Let me get to the sign off here. I'll be right back with you, Anthony, okay?
Okay.
All right. We've been live with Anthony Luscre, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango from Ohio. I hope you enjoyed that show. And you folks that are in the UK that are, on foundation licenses, take a look at what he's accomplished here. I mean, this is what he's done on 5 watts. Master of Oceania, Master of North America, Master of North America, Master of Asia, Master of South America, Master of Europe, World Radio Friendship, United States Counties, Continents of the World, USA, all 50 states, DXCC, and grid squares. He's done it all on only 5 watts. You guys get 10. Be patient. Get that antenna up. Make some great calls. Next up, we got Kevin, Kilo 0, Kilo Lima Bravo, all the way from Iowa. He's also going to talk about QRP and unconventional antennas. We're going to have a ball. We really are. It's going to be Saturday, March 26th at 20 UTC. That's noon Pacific, 3 p.m. in the Eastern Time Zone, 8 p.m. London. And no, excuse me, it'll be different now in London, won't it? It'll be at 7 p.m. in London, and it will be at, 7 a.m. in the east part of Australia, too. So, yeah, enjoying that view with Kevin. That'll be a great, great show. I want to thank all of you for coming from around the world. It's a pleasure to do the show. We want to help you get into ham radio. If you don't already have a license, contact someone like the American Radio Relay League at www.arrl.org. They're going to send you a ham radio club that's close to you in an email, and then you contact the club, get to know them, and they'll help you get on the air. www.arrl.org. All right, we've got a special sign-off in honor of Anthony. This is one we've never played, a radio sign-off close to him. This comes from Cleveland, Ohio, WGAR Radio. Till we meet again, God bless you, everybody. Thanks for watching Ham Radio Live. Goodbye, everybody.
WGAR continues to broadcast on AM with Music After Dark. Although this brings to a close 17 hours of broadcasting on WGAR FM. WGAR FM broadcasts on the federally assigned frequency of 99.5 megacycles, channel 258, with a power of 31,000 watts. WGAR FM, with studios on the top floor of Hotel Statler in Cleveland, Ohio, is owned and operated by the People's Broadcasting Corporation, a subsidiary of Nationwide Insurance.